Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good golly, Miss Molly. Welcome to another in my occasional series, the Underlooked Bands, where I talk about bands and artists that I feel need a bit more love and attention than they might be getting. Today I want to talk about one of the most unique and individual bands to come out of the early 1970s progressive scene in Britain, Stackridge. Formed in Bristol in 1969, this quintessentially English band recorded a number of fascinating albums till they first split in 1976. There were later side projects and reunions till the final retirement in 2015, but they leave behind a glorious legacy of beautiful and quirky music. Later in this video, I will be talking to two friends of the channel about their experiences as road managers for Stackridge, Alan Grange and Peter Donovan. Peter in particular was a good friend and de facto member of the band, and they have some wonderful stories to tell. But let's start with a little look at the history of the band, the members, and the albums up until their first split in 1976. Stackridge Lemon were formed in 1969 out of the ashes of an earlier Bristol band, Gritpipe Thin, or Thine as they sometimes pronounced it. This name, taken from a Goon Show character, already gave some clues as to one of the key attributes of the band, a love of absurd English humour. The lemon part of the name was soon dropped, and the singularly named Stackridge embarked on their gigging career in early 1970. The band had some core members both in the 1970s and in the later 2000s reunions. Founder Andy Davis was lead guitarist, keyboardist, vocalist, and one of the principal songwriters. Another principal songwriter, vocalist, and guitarist, and sometimes bass player, was James Warren. Jim Crunwalter was mainly the bass player. Mike Mutter Slater was on flute and vocals, and Mike Evans was resident violinist as well as on vocals, and rounding out the initial lineup was Billy Sparkle Bent on drums. Later additions would include Keith Gemmell on woodwinds, amongst others. Musically, Stackridge were an eclectic bunch with elements of blues, progressive rock, jazz, folk, vaudeville, tea house whimsy, and pastoral progressive pop, leavened with a large dose of Python-esque humour. I can't think of another band in the era that sounds anything like them. They are unique, and I don't think there can be many greater compliments for a band. There was a healthy dose of late Beatles influence, particularly melodically, and their live performances were legendary, as Granny and Peter will tell us about later, with elaborate stage setups and costumes and many unusual instruments. They also have the distinction of being the first band to play at the very first Glastonbury festival in 1970, where the opening song was Tea Time, which ironically didn't turn up on record until their second album, Friendliness.
Goodbye, the journey was stopping. I really don't think I'll be stopping. I think I'll go.
We will talk more about their live career with Granny and Peter later, so right now I'd like to focus on the recording side of things. Their first self-titled album, produced by Fritz Fryer and engineered by the great Martin Birch, was released on MCA Records in August 1971, and it quickly established their eclectic musical style and unique vision, as well as their penchant for intricate arrangements, quirky lyrics, and unusual song titles. Their first single, Dora the Female Explorer, is a charming, happy jig with a catchy refrain, and I'm yet to be clear on any links between this and the much later children's TV franchise of the same name. 14-minute long epic Slark about a monster incorporates Beatlesque lyrics with folk rock sounds reminiscent of management-related band Renaissance, Mike Oldfield, and some early Genesis. It's a beautiful and dynamic track with a great violin-led rock-out section, and it stayed a live favourite right into their latter incarnations of the band. There are some haunting and evocative pieces. 32 West Mall, where the band lived, and opener Grand Piano. Now, like most Stackridge albums, it didn't chart, but undaunted, they took their strong debut and built on it for a second album called Friendliness, released in 1972, with most of this being a self-produced effort. The aforementioned Glastonbury opener Tea Time finally makes an appearance and is a charming and relaxed track. Their surreal humour is again in evidence with titles such as Father Frankenstein is Behind Your Pillow and Syracuse the Elephant. There is upbeat catchiness on Lummy Days and Keep on Clucking, and a sombre tone on There Is No Refugee. The title track in two parts is a standout. It blends classical and rock influences with a lot of complexity and depth and shows off the band's great musicianship. And another highlight of mine on the album is Story of My Heart, which has got a beautiful melody and lyrics. The whole album is an enduring and hidden gem. In 1974, the band then took a run at the kind of success being enjoyed by other prog bands by going into Air Studios with producer George Martin for The Man in the Bowler Hat. And it did become their highest, indeed only, I think, charting UK album, and their best known album as a result. And it is indeed quintessential Stackridge, confidently showcasing their unique blend of genres with a strong set of songs delivered with musical prowess. Many long-term Stackridge aficionados may point to other albums as their favourites, but if you are new to the band, then this album is a must-listen introduction and deserves a place for me in the all-time progressive rock pantheon. From the jaunty pop of Fundamentally Yours through to the elegant and fulfilling Godspeed the Plough, the album is packed with ingenuity and craftsmanship. It's melodic, harmonic, and lyrically enchanting in equal parts. It also continues their playful titles theme with the likes of the rocking Dangerous Bacon and The Last Plimsoll. There is some vaudeville, there are Latin sounds, there are melodic orchestral passages, and even a bit of a funky groove here and there from time to time. And some great guitar work on the catchy The Last Plimsoll and another favourite of mine, To the Sun and the Moon. It's outstanding stuff, a classic album in every sense. Despite the largest amount of success the band had had to that point with the Man in the Bowler Hat album, James Warren, Billy Sparkle, and Mike Evans left the band for other projects, and along with other personal changes. And Andy Davis became the prime writer in the band, not the only writer, but the prime mover. And although future recordings would also credit the fictional Smegma, which is an amalgam meaning basically the whole band. Look out for that on the on the album credits. Live performances continued to be popular, and 2 more albums followed. 1975's Extravaganza was released on Elton John's Rocket Records, and Elton was a big fan and supporter of the band. This album was produced by keyboardist Tony Ashton, by the way, of Ashton, Gardner and Dyke and Pace, Ashton and Lord fame. And despite the personnel changes, the music continued the Stackridge traditions of eclecticism and quirky titles and lyrics. Particular favourite tracks for me on Extravaganza include the very charming Benjamin's Giant Onion, the gospel-influenced Happy in the Lord, and the very playful, wonderful track No One's More Important Than the Earthworm. The 5th and final studio album of the 1970s, the concept album Mr. Mick, was released in 1976, produced by Andy Davis and subject to record company interference. This proved a disappointment to the band and failed commercially, despite the record company enforcing a lead-off single to be added to the album, a cover of the Beatles' Hold Me Tight. The 2000 reissue of the album in the format the band had wanted is more satisfying, but even so, it's still a good album with trademark Stackridge quirky lyrics and musical variety, and it does feature one of their greatest song titles, Breakfast with Werner von Braun. I want to give a shout out to a couple of other tracks as well, some of which were particularly popular live. Do the Stanley was a great humorous single with Oompa Brass and could almost have been a Bonzo Dog Doodah Band track. And the wonderfully titled Purple Spaceships Over Yadin was a single B-side that actually isn't as wacky as it sounds, but is quite a groovy instrumental. And the live favourite, Let There Be Lids, is a fun folk rock hoedown. Stay tuned to hear Peter Donovan talk about playing the Dustbin Lids on stage on that track. Various pressures and a desire to do something different led to the band splitting up in 1976, although they reformed in 1999. The desire of band members to do something different led to James Warren and Andy Davis forming skinny-tied new wave popsters the Korgis, who actually recorded some of my all-time favourite tracks. But that's a subject for another video, as would be the later Stackridge recordings. So if you've never heard Stackridge, please go and seek out and listen to their albums. There have also been some great compilations that you can find. Stackridge were always a popular live act, and their stage shows are legendary. So it was my honour and pleasure to talk a few days ago with Alan Grange and Peter Donovan about their time on the road with the band. So I hope you enjoy these fun stories. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good golly, Miss Molly. As part of my Underlooked Band series, I've wanted for a long time to do a video about a very unique English band, one of the most unique bands to come out of England ever, I think, certainly from the 70s era, a band who had absolutely their own style, although they encompassed many, many genres, as we will be talking about. But I'm honoured today to welcome to this video to help me talk about this band. Two wonderful gentlemen. The band, of course, in question is Stackridge. And the two gentlemen in question are, first of all, my good friend, Mr. Alan Granny Grange. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. I brought along my Good Luck British Railways Cup. Keeping cool down here in California. Good to be back.
Yes, we all wish British Airways the best of luck. Or is it British Rail?
British Railways with me, mate.
British Railways. And I can see in the background you have a Man in the Bowler Hat LP sitting there.
Over here somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Just
nice.
special, dusted it off specially.
I don't have that on vinyl. I hate to say because I have it all in digital. I have everything they did in digital. I do have some Korgis LPs on vinyl.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I was a big fan of the Korgis as well. So, but I'd also like to welcome, and I'm very honoured to have a gentleman who's worked for quite a long period. As Granny, you worked with Stackridge, absolutely, but this gentleman, Mr. Peter Donovan, you worked with Stackridge for many years, I believe. So welcome, Peter. How are you, sir?
Thank you. Thank you for having me, as they say.
Oh, it's my pleasure, mate. I know. So tell me, just before we get started on showing some of these wonderful images you and Granny have shared, how did you meet the guys in Stackridge and get involved with working for them as a road manager and general all-round, almost member of the band, I believe?
Well, it starts back in the days. Stackridge were formerly, two or three of the members were in a blues band called Grip Tight Thin. And a friend of mine had a van, so we used to drive them around for we all had day jobs in the West Country. So that folded, and I lost track of them. Of course, back then there's no email, no internet, there's no connection. So somebody said, Andy Davis, who was the lead man, the founder of the band, basically, said, Andy's been looking for you. They've got this band called Stackridge Lemon, and they want you to be a part of it. So I got hold of Andy, and I used to come on stage wrapped in bandages and on purpose, making myself reacting. I used to play Dustbin Lids, things like that.
We have a picture
of. We would go to London for those early days. I'm sure Alan remembers those days when we went to London for £5, you know.
Oh yeah.
So you mentioned they dropped the Lemon, didn't they?
Yeah. They dropped the Lemon, yeah. They just became Stackridge, and then, well, funny enough, this week being Glastonbury, we were the first band on at Glastonbury for the very first Glastonbury in 1970.
That's right. The first band and the first song in Glastonbury's history. I think it was Tea Time was the song.
Probably, yeah.
Which was interesting because I don't think that turned up till the second album as a recording, but obviously they had a quite a big set even at that time.
Yeah, it was eccentric to say the least, and so that's how we started. And there's a band. The headliner on that particular show was Quintessence, who Alan might remember. Do you remember Quintessence?
Oh, of course, yeah, very flower powery and incense and Notting Hill Gate, Ladbroke Grove kind of vibe.
But that's right, that's where they were from. Yeah.
But do you think Stackridge got the gig at Glastonbury because they were locals? Was that part of it?
Yeah, I think so. I think that had a lot to do with it. Yeah.
There was various posters. Just the Glastonbury story is quite interesting because the Kinks were meant to headline originally, and then they heard it was going to be a very small affair, so they dropped out. And Mark Bolan and T-Rex came in. So this poster isn't even accurate, but it wasn't even calling it Glastonbury.
It was a bit. I mean, it's a million miles away from what it is now, but I mean, it was pretty. How you describe it? It was pretty, not unorganized, but it was pretty free for all as it was in those days. After the show, we actually slept in the farmhouse on the floor. The farmhouse,
luxury,
along with a lot of other bands. We're all on the floor ready. We left the next morning.
I was looking for actual photographs of the band, and I don't think I could find any, which is a real disappointment.
They spelled the name of the band wrong. They made it two words.
Stackridge. Stack and Ridge, yeah. So Mutter, Mike Slater, Mutter was saying the security was a bobby standing at a 5-barred gate, and there was about 1,000
It
people
was.
there. Yeah, 1,000 people there, plus 5 dogs and a goat.
They
we
probably
met these,
ate the goat later.
We met
So-
these local farm lads and in the pub, and they followed us back into the venue, and everybody was being searched for drugs. And these guys had these leather thongs around their neck with these brown sort of medallions.
Yeah.
And actually the medallions was hashish. They just made a medallion out of it and walked straight through with it around their necks.
Classic.
Apparently, Stackridge manager Mike Tobin.
Yeah.
Is it Mike Tobin? He actually helped Michael Eavis set the whole thing up and did some promotion, help with promotion. The Plastic Dog Agency was apparently a name.
Yeah, Plastic Dog was a Bristol based. They were musicians from local bands who set up an agency.
Yeah, because Stackridge
And they promoted the Granary, which is where a lot of bands played.
I mean, is it true that Stackridge were really there to fill in for anybody who, as well as to play their own set, they would fill in for anybody that didn't turn up?
Possible. I mean, some of the, obviously, it was 50 odd years ago now. So
Yeah.
I remember it being very low key. There's probably only a couple of thousand people there.
Yeah.
But didn't Mike Tobin used to be with John Sherry Enterprises, the agency?
He did.
So there's all these
Yeah, that's how we
connections,
got
all of
working.
these connections everywhere.
Yeah.
So I want to go back
Yeah,
to.
he moved to London.
Yeah, I want to go back to the beginning. You're from Bristol, as are the band. I believe.
West Country. Yeah.
West Country.
Yeah.
I don't have my copy of. I've got a brand new combine harvester, I'm afraid, so we can't play that right now.
Thank God.
This. I hope you can see this photograph, but I believe you're very prominent on the left-hand side there.
Yeah.
What happened? Where's the? So when was this taken roughly? This would be roughly in that era, 1971 or 70.
That would have been about 1970.
Yeah. So if we go
It was
through,
taken on the Downs in Bristol.
yeah. So you're standing next to Andy Davis, yeah.
No, Mutter.
Oh, Mutter's next. Well, who's in the front? And who's in the back?
Well, in the front, you got Mutter, James Warren, and Billy Sparkle, as he became known, Billy Bent.
The drummer.
And
yeah.
behind him is Mike Evans, and Andy, then me.
So Andy's right in the middle. Or is
So
Andy?
yes, he is. That's correct, yes.
So this is around about 70, 71. And you were clearly not just road managing, but as you say, you were going on stage as a performer, just doing anything.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but
and I guess
they were fairly static on the stage at that point. So I sort of used to come on and just sort of make jump up with the bandages and the capes and all the rest of it, just to sort of liven it up a little bit.
Yeah, I believe. I mean, if you look at there's clips which hopefully I'll be able to show a couple of when we finish edit. This is a recording where we do the finished editing of them in the Old Grey Whistle Test, and basically they're sitting in deck chairs, so not a lot of rock and roll.
Oh yeah, dancing on air.
Dancing on air, just romancing so there. My honey and I, like two birds in the sky, we're sailing on air.
Not a lot of rock and roll movement going on. There's no Chuck Berry
No.
going on. How would you describe their sound though at that time? I mean, what would you say they were
Well,
like?
a friend of mine here listened to Stackridge, and I thought he summed it up. He said, "I don't think they know who they are," which I thought was a really good description.
Yeah.
Because they never really, I mean, they're hard to categorize. I suppose if you had to call them anything, I'd probably call I wouldn't say they were a rock and roll band. It was more like a folk rock. Wouldn't you say, Alan?
Yeah, well, I read something recently. I'm going to try to paraphrase it. The guy said they were sort of got the same variety and mixed like message as the Beatles, but without all the drama. And they were very creative. They were, first brand I ever worked with that had a Mellotron. I mean, what the hell's that?
Wow. Yeah.
You know.
So when did you start working with them, Granny?
Well, we used to cross paths like all of these other bands. We were all doing the same circuit. So I think I've known Pete from gigs and in London and stuff. I just did about a 5-month period at the beginning of 1974. And I forget the circumstances. I'd already started with Steel Eye Span, another quirky band. And I think they didn't need me over the winter. But they said, can you stick around because we're going to the States next March? And that was like, yeah.
Right.
So I think when I was with Stackridge, it was on the understanding that I'm filling in, I think. Just go by my old diaries. And we did quite a few gigs, but it was about 4.5, 5 months, beginning of 74. I loved it. I mean, I've always had a pretty, I've always liked experimental bands. Like I love the Soft Machine. I work with Van de Graaff Generator, the legendary Gnidrolog. I love these bands that have a different approach.
Yeah.
Quirky, just the whole thing. So they actually really appeal to me.
Yeah, you and I did a great Gnidrolog stream. I would urge everyone to check it out. And in the final version of this, there will be a link to it on the screen.
Right. Yeah.
I think you could possibly categorize them as progressive, but more folk. I think you said it right, Peter. There's a lot of folk influence. There's a lot of Beatles influence.
More whimsy, not more whimsy.
Whimsy. They're very whimsical, very eccentric. Multi-instrumental though. I mean, great musicians.
Absolutely.
And I think also a little bit of that old Tea Party music hall vaudeville thing.
Yeah.
A little bit of the Bonzo Dog Doodah band and humor, a bit Python-esque. There's all that's wrapped up in there. It makes them a quintessential English band, I would say.
Very English, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, Peter, when you did tour the US with them, which I'm assuming you did, play gigs in the US, how
No, we
did
never
that
got
go?
to the US.
You didn't. I was going to say, I wonder how that went down. It'd be like,
well, there was a story there because when I did get to America the first time in 1975 with a band called Sassafras, who Alan will remember, we had the record company put on a dinner for us in New York, and during the conversation, Stackridge's name got mentioned, and the lady, what's her name? It was Simon. Oh, he's well known. He died, and his wife
Simon Napier Bell.
No, Sire Records.
Oh, Sire, yeah. It'll come back to you in a second. Sire.
Yeah, well, his wife at the time was at the dinner table, and she said to me, "Why didn't
Seymour Stein?
We tried really hard, eh?
Seymour Stein.
Seymour Stein. It was Linda Stein was his wife. And she turned to me. She said, "Why didn't Stackridge come to America? We offered them a tour, and they didn't take it. And we had a tour lined up supporting the Kinks coast to coast, which would have been perfect.
Good. That would have been good.
Yeah,
but the management didn't take it because we're on Alan knows all about the college circuit in England. We were doing 6 shows. We did 300 shows one year. So they were they were doing okay, and they didn't really want to. Nobody put the money down for us to do it. That was the problem. We didn't know about this till I met Linda Stein, which was Kinks, that would have been really good.
The Kinks would have been a good fit because they were in their theatrical period then. I think that might have fitted very well.
It would have done, yeah. It would have been a good bill.
So,
and it might have been a good way to do a first tour because you'd have had a lot of the organization. Whereas my first tour with Steel Eye, I think they booked the first 5 days and just winged the rest of it for 2 months. We was flying and zooming around. There was no real. They must have gone on a hope that there was going to be more gigs because my first itinerary is a week long. We were there for over 2 months. So
big country,
to go out with an established band like the Kinks would have been maybe a really good way to start.
They might just have been unique enough.
It never happened.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they wouldn't have appealed to American sensibilities, but they might just have been unique enough to become a cult thing. I think.
Well, the Soft Machine, they made a real impression.
I think it would have prolonged the life of the band too.
Yeah.
Well, there was a lot of people with open ears back in the late 60s, early 70s. And I remember, I still bump into people that remember going to a Jimi Hendrix concert in 68 in the States. And they remember the opening act, the Soft Machine, this weird 3-piece, nothing to match them, unusual band. And people they remembered them. So you never know the impact. That's what we used to always think. You never know who's watching.
And I think that Canterbury progressive scene, Stackridge are probably closer to that than some of the other progressive bands that were big at the time.
Well, they were whimsical too. There was an element of that, like not taking it like tongue in cheek, a little bit like a lot of play on words with Kevin Ayers especially. It didn't take itself too seriously, but it was very musician-like, very thought out. But it wasn't too serious. It wasn't into the posing so much.
Yeah, they had that English humour, the eccentric, as I say, the Bonzos and Pythons, and a very similar level of humour in general. I mean, look at the song titles that Stackridge had. I mean, Dora the Female Explorer, Syracuse the Elephant.
Yeah.
Who's up there with Bill Stokes is always one of my favourites. Dangerous Bacon.
Yep.
Great title. And then the one about the purple aliens over
Yatton.
Over Yatton. the song titles alone were enough to go. You go. Okay, I wonder what that sounds like.
Check it out.
That's right. Purple spaceships over Yatton. Yeah, I love that one. So all that, the Galloping Gaucho, and they're all great. Each one of them sounded different, though. You had some kind of bluesy stuff, some rock stuff, some Tea Party, tea set vaudeville type stuff. There was always something very different, and some, particularly in The Man in the Bowler Hat with George Martin, some orchestral elements added, which made them sound really, really impressive. That's probably their most successful album, I think, commercially.
Yeah, I mean, that was doing an album, being in the same room with George Martin. I was just, we're all in awe, And if he asked me to move a mic, I was, oh my God, he's talking to George Martin.
He's talking to me. He's actually talking to me. I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about The Man in the Bowler Hat later, but the first album, where I take it you do recall, the first self-titled albums, I was going to say Genesis, different man, its beginnings or its inception. I think Martin Birch even produced that one or was involved.
Yeah, I thought it was. I'd left for a while by then. I left for like 9 months.
Okay.
And I thought it was Fritz Fryer produced it.
Yeah, Martin Birch was maybe an engineer on it, but he did have some little bit of involvement. But even here, you can see. First of all, they always had great artwork.
Yeah.
But this, you can see the titles.
Percy the Penguin.
And the three-legged table, essence of porphyria. I can never pronounce that.
Porphyry.
There you go. I knew you'd get it.
I'm a grammar school. Don't forget grammar school.
Then. So that I'm not sure about sales figures, but I'm sure it was a cult hit at the time, as it were.
Well, the song 32 West Mile was where we all lived until we got evicted.
Yeah. Right. And why did you get evicted?
We weren't paying the rent.
All right. I thought maybe you were too loud.
Probably that too.
We might have been, but it was paying the rent was the problem.
Yeah. I do want to go back to, though, because we will talk about some of the albums and your involvement with them, but just back to this. So where was this photograph taken, can you recall?
That was taken in Andy Davis's house in Yatton, just outside Bristol.
So Yatton is a real place.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay. And did you see any purple spaceships?
No. I think that was Crun came up with that.
Yeah. And then we've got a few more. I think this looks more like London, but it may be.
This is the lineup when I was with them. The second from the left is Keith Gemmell. He was woodwinds and flute. He was great. Another element to the band.
Yeah, the drummers on the left is Peter Van Hook.
Oh, he was the Mike and the Mechanics later. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Peter Van Hook is on the right here.
He's on the left.
He's on the left.
Keith
Sorry.
Gemmell.
Right. I think Keith Gemmell, I may be wrong in saying this, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but Keith may have passed away.
He did. He had throat cancer. He smoked these cheroots, didn't he? He was a bit of a dandy, a dandy, and he smoked those cheroots.
Because many of the other band members are still with us, thankfully. But Keith did pass away.
Well, he was with a band called Audience, and he was on the Charisma label when we did Genesis and Van der Graaf Generator package tours. He was in Audience, and they were a great band. Another one of these really interesting musical bands, with just great of that period, you know.
No,
on the Charisma label.
Charisma,
Famous
yeah.
Charisma.
Was this? This is actually the Andy Davis band, or is it Stackridge?
That's Stackridge.
It is Stackridge. Okay, so it's an actual.
That was taken at Reading Festival.
Okay.
You see Pete just poking over the monitor.
Those two guys were these school teachers. They'd get up on stage and pretend they had beer bottles. They'd pretend to be playing. They used to do this kind of.
I love it.
They're like a couple of nutcases that used to follow us around.
Yeah. And is that Mutter?
In the front, yeah.
Mutter and Alan, is that Mike King, the violin?
Mike Evans, is it?
Mike Evans. Mike Evans, yeah. And who's that bloke hiding behind the monitor?
Who's that guy right at the side? Yeah. That's me. Waiting for your cue.
I mean, look at the production in those days. I mean, that was a major festival. Look at the lights.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah. See, Pete's back there getting his dustbin lids ready.
Well, I mean, if you look at the photographs that do exist of that first Glastonbury, the stage is pitiful,
like a pyramid.
It's terrible. It's like a barn with the roof taken off. This is an interesting looking guy. So, Granny, this is you.
Yeah. Check it. That's how I used to check out the hotel. I'd just throw my bags out the window and catch them up.
Yeah. I'm not sure whether you were working for Stackridge at this time or not. But.
I think this was in towards the end of '73 when I was with the Steel Eye, but I came literally from Steel Eye, and the next week I'm mixing monitors for Stackridge. So that's probably what I looked like.
So
it's cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
So here's the famous Dustbin Lids, though.
Well, look at that, painted up.
Yeah. And these were your responsibility, Peter, I believe. Yeah,
we used to go to municipal dump sites after 11 o'clock at night and steal all the dustbin lids from the storage places.
And can I ask, how did you tune them?
Yeah.
Well, you didn't. Well, the trick was there was really heavy ones and some light ones, and the last one on the stage to grab the dustbin lids, sometimes me would get the heavy lids.
Oh yeah,
because they were really, it's hard work when you're, and we do like a dancing where you lean forward, lean back, but it was hard work. And the band Andy Davis would take great delight in going playing as fast as possible. So we're clapping away with these things, getting really tired, and he'd be laughing his head off.
Because the dustbin lids would catch the air. You think about it, there would be a lot of physical effort. Yeah. Let there be lids. Wasn't that the song? Let there be lids.
Let there be lids, yeah.
As opposed to let there be drums, yeah.
That's right. Yeah,
it's clever. Again,
I mean, it's fantastic.
It was basically an Irish jig.
Yeah.
That Mike Evans came up with.
And something. I have distinct memories of Pete. You can't tell from this thing, but Pete's quite tall, angular, and he was knees and legs going, banging the dustbin lids. It was quite a sight, and he had a load of hair. It was fantastic.
Towards the end, I used to come on in a tuxedo, black, dress up in a tuxedo and play the lids.
It sounds like a lot of fun. I mean, was it generally a fun experience till I guess they split?
Oh yeah, I mean it was. Yeah. It was. They were your mates. We got on really well. We had a lot of fun. There was no us and them. It was just we're all in it together. We had so much fun.
And generally speaking, it was a fairly stable lineup. I know that James Warren left in 73 or so. But I mean, most of the core band remained together till 76. So quite a bit of stability.
Yeah, I think 75. We did this when I left. We opened for Elton John took a shine to Stackridge and he signed them to Rocket Records.
Oh.
And we played Wembley Stadium. Elton John was a headliner.
That's why you played that.
The Beach Boys, Chaka Khan, the Eagles, Joe Walsh, and us.
There it is. Yeah. And look, clipping. I can't believe it.
Then now I get why. Yeah, so you were. I didn't realize it was Rocket Records. It makes sense now with Elton John. You guys being on the bill with Elton John.
Well, often you play Cleethorpes Winter Gardens in the northeast of England. and there'd be a crate of champagne, love Elton, in the dressing room.
Ah, it's nice.
You know, Stackridge get the same letter size as everybody else. That was pretty cool.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. And it's a hell of a festival or gig if you look at that one. Hell of a gig.
It was a beautiful day too. I mean, it was a sunny day. The Beach Boys went down a storm, with all the crowd singing their songs and all that.
Yeah. I remember I've read a lot of articles about the Beach Boys took everybody by storm that day.
But it cost £3.50 to get in. Who can afford that?
Indeed. So, well, I mean, you must have a lot of fond memories of that day, Peter.
I did. It was, we had a nice hotel next to the Wembley Stadium, which we didn't usually get. So I could go back to the hotel, have a bit of lunch, go back to the gig. It was really, and funny that after that gig, I got the dates for the next year. And that's when I thought it was the usual, Keele University, Black Swan, Sheffield, the usual gigs
Pier.
we've been doing over and over again. And at the time, I got an offer from the Rubettes, who Alan may remember.
Oh, I remember them well. Sugar Baby Love.
Yeah, Sugar Baby Love. There's a few, I got some stories with them. But I got offered a tour with the Rubettes, a European tour, and I thought, you know what? We start off in Denmark, we're going to Finland, Germany, Belgium, and I thought this sounds far more interesting in doing Keele University again, So I said to Andy, I said, I've had this offer, and he said, you'd be a fool not to take it.
Yeah.
So that was really the start of my professional career, because that's when I went off on my own. I'd left Stackridge. It wasn't like with my mates anymore.
So Stackridge was like a proving ground for you, though. You learned everything there was to learn about managing, road managing, being with a band, stage, lighting. You must have learned everything with that one.
Yeah, I ended up doing lights because we played Watford Town Hall. As Alan remembers it, back in those days, I mean, it wasn't really technical. You had a Marshall stack and a curly lead. That was all you had. I mean, and a drum kit. There was no effects pedals. There was no echo units. It was very straightforward. Didn't take much. And then we got lights, and we bought these lights, and we rented these lights from somebody that I didn't. We get to Watford Town Hall, and there's all this lighting equipment on a pile on the stage. And I thought, what do I do with this? So I set up these scaffold towers, put the lights on it, ran all the cables back, and it was 4-phase power. These were tells. It wasn't just plugging in. I had to tie into the mains at Watford Town Hall, and I go to this closet and I'm sweating bullets. I am sweating bullets, literally. And I look at the power and I'm thinking, what do I do? So I thought, well, this must be in, that must be out. So I undid the lugs, took the power out on the top, and I put one in at a time, the lead I had, the cable I had, locked it all down, and I went to the band. I said, stand back, I'm going to turn the power on. So the band all sat in the front row, and I got a broom handle, and I got this broom, and I flipped the switch, in the power, and nothing happened. Then I went to the little dimmer rack in the control at the side of the stage, and I used the dimmer handle again, this brush again, to push a fader up, and the light came on, and they all started clapping.
Wonder we didn't kill somebody.
I know, it's elephant safety. I mean, it was a learning curve. You've talked about this a lot, Granny, in our streams. You just had to do it. Somebody had to do it.
But that was part of the... Yeah, I mean, that's when it started getting serious, when you started to get into dimmers and all of that. So, but the whole that period, it was just somebody would show up with this new gadget. What the hell's that? Oh, it's an echo unit. How does it work? Tapes. You had to know how to run the tapes around the heads, and then that was a Binson Echo Rec at a disc. Where's the tape? It records it on the disc. So Wem Copycat was a tape loop. So it's just, you never knew what you were going to be handed to figure out. And
you must have had some issues huffing that mellotron around, though.
It was very delicate.
Yeah.
Treated it gently.
The worst was the piano, the upright piano we used to carry around. It weighed a ton.
Yeah, was that?
But also in those days, as Alan would know, there was no stage crews. You had to hump it in yourself. There was no crews.
Well, Pete, correct me. See if you remember this. I think it was you and me. I'm a bit of a activists, and we're like, well, why the hell don't we get some of this stuff in cases? Because everybody was having flight cases, and so we kind of pitched to the band, and they had a management on Park Lane or somewhere, and they didn't get it at all. They said, well, we'll give you the cases, but we're not paying for the wheels. Do you remember that, Pete?
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I think we had 4x12 cabinets. They would put runners on them as opposed to wheels, so you just slide them down the stairs.
Well, there was quite the range of equipment. I mean, Stackridge played a lot of instruments on stage, wind instruments, violin, and so on. There was quite the range of stuff. I mean, did you fight over who was going to do the mellotron and the flute, or, you know?
Alan did the monitors, so he did the monitors.
Yeah.
I'd never done monitors in my life.
I don't know who else was doing it. Was it just two of us?
I was going to ask you the same thing. I can't remember. I was going to ask you the same thing. I remember my first gig was Cleethorpes Winter Gardens, January the 3rd in Cleethorpes. Just getting there, you deserve a medal. Oh. Cleethorpes, January.
When you joined us too, we were staying at the Goodge Street Hotel.
I remember that, yeah.
And there was it was when there was a petrol crisis.
That's right.
We had a 5-gallon drum of diesel on the back of the truck.
Yeah.
Those were the days.
Well, it must have been just you and I doing the gig.
I think so. But I remember I don't remember how I got involved, whether we must have crossed paths a bit. Somehow or other we knew each other. I don't remember the circumstances, but next thing you know, I'm in Cleethorpes with you, and it hadn't even been discussed like who would be doing what. I know Brian loves to joke about get the job of carrying the flute, but you just turn up and okay, what am I doing? And there's the monitor rig. Well, I'd never set a monitor rig up in my life, but it was pretty self-explanatory. Everything was color-coded. There's a little 5 or 6 channel mixer, and Keith Gamble would say, "Give me a little bit more," and I'd tweak a knob and go through it. It was just like
I remember you asking me how it wired up, and I said, I don't know. I've never set it up.
That'd be around about 1973, was it?
73, 74.
Yeah.
And so 74. I'd had enough experience by then to know about like coax cables, signal. I was just beginning to stumble into it and managed to figure it out. I mean, basically, you got a mixer. The mixer goes through a preamp and an amp, and you got speakers and maybe three channels out, color-coded. So it's sort of, but then as far as like getting the levels, I was bluffing it, but we did it. I had a go. I'd like to say we would have a go.
So just looking at some of these wonderful posters, and it may spark some memories. I know, Granny, you're involved in some, but not all of them.
Right.
There's Stackridge at the Friars, Aylesbury.
Yeah, we played there a lot.
It was a hippie gig, real hippie gig.
110 pence for a ticket.
Yeah.
Then there's this great marquee clipping.
2 good bands there.
Stackridge and Gnidralog a few days later.
Oh, yeah.
Noticing UFO on the bill there too, which is one of my favorite bands of all time.
Well, they heard about the spaceships over Yatton, so they wanted to be on as well.
That's right. Yeah. A marquee, was it a regular gig, Peter, for you guys? Or?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we played there a lot.
Yeah, it was a great place. I've been there once. I only managed to get. It was UFO I saw at the marquee, but that was in 1979, so different era.
Yeah.
This is a good one. I like. This is Hastings Pier.
Oh God, yeah, Hastings Pier. Yeah.
Yeah, it does
we
mention.
What's the other one? What's the next place down from Hastings? What's it called?
Deal
in Kent.
No, the other way towards Brighton.
Folkestone.
Yeah,
Over.
Folkestone.
Yeah.
Leescliff Hall, Folkestone.
Leescliff Hall. Thank you. That's it. Leescliff Hall. That was on the pier too.
And
we used to do the.
Go ahead, mate.
Go on.
No, you go ahead.
We used to do the one in Southend,
Kersal Ballroom.
The Kersal Flyers.
I've just remembered a little bit of a naughty story, Brian, concerning the Folkestone Leescliff Hall. I had this young girl would show up when we did gigs in that area, and she was very sweet, but accommodating, if you know what I mean. But we staggered out after a little get together in the toilets at the Folkestone Leescliff Hall. But she came out, and everybody's breaking up because she had all the floor tiles were polished with this red polish, and she came out in her knees. Their white jeans were just Right.
Oh.
Oh, God. Dead
What have you
giveaway.
been up to? Oh, let me think.
That's right. X
This
marks
is
the
a
good
spot.
one. I hope you don't mind me showing you all these flyers and posters.
No,
No.
Because it just might prompt some memories. This is Midnight Court at the Lyceum at the Strand. Nice lineups. Status Quo and Stackridge.
Yeah.
And this would
And
be when
Stray. Yeah, we did a lot of gigs with Stray.
Stray. Yeah. I guess the Quo. This is when they were switching to hard rock blues, as opposed
Yeah,
to
I think so.
yeah. Again, admission £1.
So that's old money. So it's before 71.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one's a little bit harder to see, but this is the Promenade concert.
Yeah, we did a tour of all the seaside resorts along the south coast, Torquay, Paignton, Brighton, all those places along the coast.
Yeah, I think this is like 73,
in the summer.
73, 74. I'm not sure which year.
Yeah.
But that's how did the? I mean, was that a pretty successful tour doing that very specific set of gigs?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. We seem to be, or Stacker seemed to be in this sort of void between. They were sort of too big for clubs, but not enough. They weren't selling enough for concerts.
Yeah, theaters.
Because they were eccentric. They had a devoted following. I'd say of about 1,000 people every show, but they couldn't sort of get beyond that to the big time, if you know what I mean.
Did you see a lot of the same fans coming back to multiple gigs?
Oh God, yeah.
I guess some of them are still fans today. Hopefully, they're watching this video when it goes out. So,
I'm sure there's some diehards out there.
And I would like to say, if you did go to see the band back in the day, leave some comments on this underneath.
Well, I think too, Stackridge. I mean, when that Reading festival, we were on a high because they built up this following with this eccentric act. You know, Mutter came to the fore as a front man, and he did really well, like the old musical style. When we played that Reading festival, I mean, I couldn't believe it. You know, thousands and thousands of people all stood up. You know, all the way back, I was absolutely gobsmacked. You know, all these people stood up, and he left after that show, so they kind of built up. And then Mutter left, and then they kept changing the lineups. It was never, it changed all the time. So I think they lost their sort of originality a little bit. They were sort of going off in all these different directions, and they,
and that was a trick. Yeah.
Mutter did leave for a while, 73, 74 era. He did,
but it was a tricky period. Everything was changing, the business and the promotions and everything, and it started becoming more money oriented. Like I used to keep a diary of what bands got paid, but we weren't doing budgets and projections and stuff. But for a band, it all started to get a bit more serious about 74, I think. Yeah, production was changing, the business.
Yeah,
a little bit more business-like. It always has been a business, but it became a bit more business-like right about then.
James Warren did leave at 73, didn't he? And then Mutter must have left for a while. He did come back again. He left for a while after that. I guess it changed a little bit, I guess, Peter. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think too, musicians by nature, they're just not, they don't think about, very few bands I work for actually thought about the business side of things, the money.
Yeah.
But the successful ones did. I worked for InXS, and they would meet with the management every month, want to know what was happening, what the plans were, what markets they could explore. They would really focus on how to do it. But Stackridge never bothered. We do a tour, they go home and come back again, and there's no direction, if you see what I mean.
It's just about the fun of playing the music, I guess. Yeah. I love this poster. It's very Monty Python. Almost the greatest show on earth.
The astounding
Stackridge. This is in the Friendliness album, and Do the Stanley, which is a great song. This is in that era. I do like it's very Python. I guess this is the most Python-esque feel you get from them in that particular tour. Yeah.
Well, Camel were a good band too.
Yeah.
And Camel, supported by Camel. Guys. Yeah. In fact, Camel are a band I would say, if I was asked to compare Stackridge to some of the bands in that very large progressive category at the time, I would have said Camel were one of the ones that were closer to them rather than further away from them. Again, whimsical, a lot of flute work, a lot of woodwinds, and Very whimsical lyrics. Maybe Camel were a little bit more concepty, I guess.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
Yeah. There's another one. This is a good one. Who's that in the picture?
Mudder.
That's Mutter.
Mutter.
That's Mutter, right. He's got a very proto mullet kind of thing going
Yeah,
on.
that's probably the wind. But look at those gigs. I mean, I know what a King's Hall Derby.
Almost like a Mohican.
Polly,
It is.
Cotton Bowl Red Car.
Oh, look at that with sassafras. Didn't you say you worked with sassafras?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As well.
So what year is this? Do you remember?
That would have been about 74.
74. I noticed at the bottom it talks about the Stackridge Society. I guess that's the fan club. Who was running that? Do you know? Was it somebody in the band?
No, it was. I think it was a secretary. I think it's something to do with. You mentioned John Sherry. I think it was one of the secretaries from John
agency.
Sherry.
Yeah.
Yeah, agency ran it. Yeah.
So I've only been in one of those venues. That's Wolverhampton Civic Hall. I'm sad to say it's the only one of those I've been in. But,
oh yeah.
Universities.
I'm not sure if Cotton Bowl's still going in Redcar.
The Cotum, no, I think it was demolished. It wasn't the ballroom. The ballroom was the big room. When that was no longer available, they did gigs in what was called the Cotum Bowl, but it was a bit shabby, I think. There's just a plug. There's a journalist in the Northeast who's done 2 fantastic books about the Cotum, the jazz club at the Cotum Hotel in Redcar. And every big band on the way to and from the north, going back to London, would stop off and do gigs at Redcar. And so there's some great
jazz club.
Yeah, if anybody's interested,
and
then
go to the horses and do some gambling.
Apparently there's two of the guys involved with it took photographs of everything, quality photographs. I recommend the book if anybody's
bands, even very large bands, would play smaller places like that. That was the era of the.
It was a good on the way back gig, maybe, or on the way to, and it was respected. That was the other thing. It was the place in the area to see a band. Yeah.
A couple of university gigs on there. I'm assuming Stackridge were pretty popular with the university set circuit.
Oh yeah, we could do an entire tour of university gigs in colleges.
Yeah,
we did practically everyone there was.
I was going to say.
Yeah, and not to say that it's highbrow music, because it's not. I'm not implying that, but I think it's just the kind of thing that students would love at the time.
Well, especially on a Friday night, you're in somewhere like Newcastle Polytechnic, and they all get completely off their drunken stomachs.
Careful what you say.
And love the humor. They would love the humor. I guess the humor of the band.
I remember doing a gig in Hull University, and Van der Graaf. We were supporting Van der Graaf Generator, and we're in the dressing room. We all shared this. It was a classroom, converted classroom, which we shared with Van der Graaf. And some guy crashed through the plate glass window and asked where the bar was. And we pointed in the direction, off he went.
I think mentioning Hull University makes me think of Blackadder.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he references the 3 great universities, and one of them's Hull.
I've only done 2 gigs in my whole time, I think, in Hull, and one of them was a backbreaker, no humpers. I had to go up a long flight of stairs.
Hall.
I think you know it. Was it the City Hall? Yeah.
Yeah, horrible gig.
And then the crowd would be ugly. Wasn't even worth all the effort. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
This is a nice poster for a gig at the King's Hall in Derby.
That's a very that's a spaceships again. Yeah.
1975.
Yeah. I love that.
And it's 85 pence for this one.
Oh wow.
The band were cheaper for this one.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, these you may have. It's a long time ago, so this is, you probably don't have specific memories of these gigs, but it's a beautiful poster. Do you have any, Peter? Do you have any of that stuff still in your possession? That kind of memorabilia?
I probably do. I should dig up. My scanner doesn't work anymore, so I've got old photographs. I should probably have to take a picture of it and do it that way.
Yeah, you just go down to your local CVS. They have a digital copier. You can do them at the CVS. You can enlarge. Really? You can do it. Yeah, CVS. Any of those drugstores have a digital copier for photographs. You can take a USB stick. You can take the originals. Yeah.
If you ever feel like doing that and then coming back and showing us all that wonderful stuff, then because
I'll
Granny's
have to
shared
look
some
into
great
that.
stuff.
Yeah, I got some really good professional, professional photographs of us on
Right.
the stage. And there's also one of me in the bandages.
Oh, I'm gonna see that.
Those would be great. We'll definitely
Yeah.
have to do a follow-up if you ever get those copied. Yeah. This is one that's involves a lot of the rock and roll rowdies guys, I guess.
Yeah.
Wishbone Ash and
Oh, yeah.
Renaissance and Stackridge.
Right.
50 pence.
50 pence, huh?
Yeah. Was that were you both involved in that tour?
I wasn't on this one.
You weren't on that one for either Wishbone Ash or Stackridge.
No.
Peter would be the one.
I don't know what year this would have been.
I don't know. It doesn't say.
Yeah, it would have been, yeah, Wishbone Ash.
Although it does say.
I remember doing a European tour. We did a European tour with Wishbone Ash, but I can't think of this one for some reason.
See, Wishbone were kind of by 74, they were heading to the States, and I was with them in 75. So this may be a 73. Renaissance were on the go then.
It does say
it was new money.
I do like the fact it says all concerts begin 7:30 p.m. except
At
Hull.
home.
6:30.
They close early because they get too drunk.
It's too far north.
If you really want to find out, of course, you can look up the date and the day, and you can figure these things out. But
yeah, they're all
I'm
online.
guessing 73.
Yeah, I think it may be 73.
Because Stackridge almost had given up the ghost by 76, unfortunately.
It could have been earlier because it says with them in concert, Stackridge, their first single, Dora, the Explorer, female Explorer, that would be
71 then.
71, 72, yeah.
Because it'll be new money, came in the February.
Yeah. 71, I think.
Yeah.
So that's actually quite a neat one. I like that one. But you mentioned GS, the agency. Was it GSE?
John Sherry.
John Sherry Enterprises, yeah.
So you can see some of the bands, well, obviously Wishbone, Renaissance, and Stackridge. So that's why they're out together. Vinegar Joe.
Yeah.
Gordon Giltrap.
Yeah.
I remember him. Yeah. Stray as well, of course, an audience. So.
Yeah, we did a lot of shows with them, as I said.
There's another
Island.
Slough College.
Oh.
60p now. 60p.
I love that. The Pigsty Hill Light Orchestra.
Oh,
I love those names.
That was a pantomime tour we did. We did a Christmas panto tour.
I'm intrigued now.
Tell us about that.
Actually, I've got a program somewhere. There was us and Pigsty. Well, Pigsty Hill did their set, and then Stackridge did their set, and then there would be the pantomime. And James was at the side of the stage doing the narration, and we had 3 girls would come on. I can't remember exactly. It's supposed to be Treasure Island, and I was Jobsworth. I'd come on in a brown coat and start sweeping the stage, and things like that. You know, it was kind of mad. And we did it right up to Christmas. I remember the last gig was at the Roundhouse in Dagenham.
Oh, I remember that gig.
Christmas Eve. Yeah, that was the last gig of the tour.
So we had the Stackridge at the Mummers play live on stage. Steel Eye rather. Stackridge had the panto. I mean, it was
Treasure Island.
Groundbreaking stuff. That's Groucho in the poster, isn't it?
Groucho, yeah, it's Groucho.
Who's the lady?
I don't know. Is it Jean Harlow or somebody? I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've never heard of the Pigsty Hill Light Orchestra. Did those guys?
Well, there's a place in Bristol called There's a place in Bristol called Pigsty Hill.
Oh, there you go.
So it's a kind of a collective of Bristol.
They were like a folk band. They were kind of an eccentric folk band.
So it's all Bristol. It's a Bristol connection.
All Bristol, yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I don't know if anybody ever filmed these, but I wish they had because I'd love to see this.
Yeah.
Did you remember anybody filming this stuff at all, Peter? Because there's
I don't.
Very little online from that era. There's the Old Grey Whistle Test stuff, which was from 75, I think. Very little Stackridge.
Yeah, unless it was an organized, like a student union had some project, or a BBC or TV, regional television might pop in every now and then.
I would die to see this.
Yeah.
A video of this. That would be, And there's a few mentions of them in the press.
Well, that's
from January 74. January 74, Belfast. Belfast.
Oh,
And Mutter's
God,
not there.
no.
Mutter's not there.
Well, there was
Can you-
definitely three. That was me, you, and Barry, Alan, because there's three of us in the
Barry
truck.
was the third one. That's right. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
it does mention that Mike Evans sings the Laughing Policeman.
Policeman. Yeah.
Yeah, he
So-
did. Yeah, that's right.
That
Just
must have
when
been
everybody's starting to take things too seriously, he would come on and do the laughing policeman, bring you right
Yeah.
back down to Stackridge reality. But this
We also got to
clipping,
remember
sorry,
that was at the height of the Troubles in Belfast.
that's
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they said to us, "Don't worry, you're not going to be anywhere near where the trouble is."
Oh,
And we go down the Falls Road. Do you remember
Oh
that?
God. You know, you
We're
could
going down
always
the
tell
Falls
in
Road, which is-
you could always tell in Belfast which area you were in by how they painted the sidewalks.
yeah.
You know, which
Yeah.
colours were painted on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
That's how you knew where
We
you
can
were.
laugh now, but we were in a truck, Peter and I, we were driving the equipment from the south up to Belfast. And at the time, they didn't have a fixed post because it kept getting blown up, the customs and the border police or whatever. So they said, look, next 2 or 3 miles, no matter what happens, don't stop. And they put an armed soldier on each side of the cab and on the outside. And they said, just keep going no matter what happens. And so that was the
Yeah.
kind of thing. It was a little bit
Dodgy for
unnerving.
bands. Yeah.
But we
very
got through.
dodgy.
We got through. And then this is that night, this little clipping here, if I can talk about it. During the sound check, I'd be mooning the band and clowning around, you know, shy, retiring type that I am. And I must have bared my ass. And Crun, the bass player, says, "You wouldn't do that if the audience was in, would you?" I said, "You might want to be careful daring me, you know." Anyway, during that evening, there was something crackling behind the bass gear or something. I went on, I'm banging on the strip board, whatever it was, trying to fix it. And he goes, "There, you bet you wouldn't do it now." So I dropped my trousers and underpants, complete Monty, full Monty, and did a pirouette around the front of the stage. And all the people are like, and then I just staggered off. And this is the write-up. The band got ink.
Oh yeah, it does say, it says they were forced to pause midway through when some of the equipment became live. However, the gap was amply filled and one of the roadies drew applause by exposing his backside to the audience.
I exposed more than my backside.
So I would like to say that anybody that was in the audience that day,
I'm sorry.
Granny is available to be sued
right.
for mental, you know,
Think
for
of the
mental
suffering.
issues,
Nightmares. I mean, nightmares.
by that event. I mean, do you remember that, Peter? I'm doing that.
Yeah, I do very well. I think Quinn said, "Do something, Alan. Do something," and so that's what he did. I remember.
Maybe the
I
audience were
remember
getting
before.
impatient or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
Single-handedly ended the troubles right there.
Yeah.
I remember we
Single-handedly.
played in, I think it was Armagh or some other place, and you couldn't park the truck in the middle of the town because they were a bit concerned about bombs and whatnot. So the truck
Right.
was a ways away. And I went off to get the truck, and I came up the steps of this club. We were in a basement, and there's an armed soldier standing in front of me, you know, looking down the street. And he told me to go back in.
Oh,
Didn't have to ask me.
yeah.
Yeah. There's another little clip about the Rockfield, using Rockfield, a famous studio
The
in
studios
Wales.
there, yeah.
In fact, there's a really great documentary out about that studio, which I think is either on Netflix or Amazon. So you should check that out. But they're talking about spaceships over Yatton. It's not purple spaceships yet. A maxi single. Remember those?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But this is another great poster for the Mr. Mick album.
Mr. Mick, yeah.
Now, I've read a lot about the fact the record company interfered quite a bit with this album, and it wasn't really what the band wanted it to be.
It was, but yeah, I mean, Mutter and Andy were, you know, I remember going to London when they were mixing this album, and they were the two, you know, they were driving it forward at that point, Andy and Mutter, and it was really the band was on its way out at this point.
Yeah,
I think that was the last real album they did, apart from when they reformed.
Well, the thing about this one is they actually covered the Beatles' "Hold Me Tight," which was unusual for them to cover anybody on their record, to do a cover version. So that was maybe a sign they weren't necessarily 100% into it. I don't know, but because they weren't into covers normally. Well, not cover versions like that, no. But Dancing
they might
on
do
Air,
jokey.
yeah, it's still Dancing on Air is a great song. It was a Mutter thing, but
yeah.
There's a little picture of
James.
James. Yeah, nice picture there. There's a couple of other things I just wanted to briefly show. This is the January 74 tour schedule, which I think, Granny, you shared with me.
Yeah, that's about all I've got from those days, from that tour.
So there's some highlights, live interview, London Broadcasting Corporation, which perhaps is still a recording of out there somewhere.
You just never know.
Some university gigs.
There's always university gigs.
That's right.
So Sunderland Poly, Lanchester Poly, University of Nottingham, sort of fairly far north, some of these, Sheffield, Birmingham. This was so was this given to you, Granny, by the agency, or?
Well, so yeah, I mean, you'd be given a copy of at least the basics of what you would do in the next week or two. And so, yeah, this would have come from the office, would have been handed out maybe at the first gig. Pete might have brought it. You'd have been told, we're meeting at wherever location to get on the truck, and then they'd have a copy there. So Pete was like the man with Stackridge. I was hired on.
Yeah,
Pete was the we might have lost him temporarily.
We've lost Peter, I think.
Well, he's holding the phone and probably getting a little bit excited. And slipped out of his fingers.
He's getting very excited. I noticed on this one though, there's three. There's a gig in Dublin, but there's also two in Belfast. So there was 3 Irish gigs on this tour.
Well, we did another one as well in Portrush. Maybe on another part of the page. I think we went out to Portrush.
But what I do find interesting is you had to get the boat to Fishguard to do a gig
from Fishguard, I think,
in that island just off Wales, isn't it? That bit off Wales.
It's at the end of Wales. It's quite a drive, yeah. But I was researching this a couple of years ago when I was scanning this. The hotel, I don't remember the name. It's on that list. It's a classic location. It's right up on the cliffs overlooking the harbour.
Is it
quite a dramatic setting?
There's a hill in Ingleton.
No, that's up in the Midlands. That's up near near.
Oh, the Mount. I'm looking for the hotels on here.
That's kind of hard to see on the screen. But one of the hotels, it was just they stayed in interesting places. Unless you did a full-on tour, a band on a budget would stay at whichever hotels would have them or whatever they could afford.
The Frenchman Hotel,
something like that.
Yeah, but it's quite an interesting set of gigs. I mean, it's not. Some of them are not the normal settings. Right. I mean, Fishguard is not a.
I don't think we actually did a gig there. That was just a long drive to then get the ferry the next morning.
Yeah,
you maybe couldn't do it in a day. And then we came back via Rosslare, I think. We came back a slightly different way.
Yeah, but it's quite. It shows you the extent that bands went to in those days, Stackridge included. Yeah, the other one that we've seen
trousers.
We've seen the trousers. So I'll hide that now. Unfortunately, we did lose Peter, I think.
I still see something down there, but maybe he'll come back up.
We can't hear him. But we've. Oh, there we go. He maybe can hear us. I don't know.
He might have gone to the spend a penny.
Indeed. Which happens to us all in this business.
There he is.
Hey. Hello, mate.
I needed to pee, sorry.
I told you. I said he's got to spend a penny.
So just next time, mute the microphone because we heard everything.
That's why I got this. That's why I got this cup right here, Pete. I don't have to move. I just take care of business.
Yeah.
YouTube is notorious for people going for a pee and not switching their microphone off, and you can hear them in the mic.
I don't know.
Yeah, we were just showing that January 74 tour itinerary, which includes gigs in places like Fishguard, which is quite unusual.
Yeah.
Quite a trek to get there, I would say. But...
Well, we went to quite a few places like that. They managed to find a gig.
Yeah. So we'll probably just want to talk a little bit more. We talked a little about your experiences on the road with the band, a little bit more about the music. I think, as we mentioned, the main album that casual listeners would probably be aware of because of the Abbey Road George Martin connection is The Man in the Bowler Hat. I mean, you mentioned a little bit earlier about George Martin. And what are some of your memories, Peter, of that recording and that era?
Well, we did it in Air Studios, which is gone now. But
I did it in
it
Air.
was a very Oxford Circus, right in the middle. It was on the 5th floor of the. It was
Right
a very.
enough.
And that was George Martin's studio. It was Air Studios, and we
Yeah.
also had Jeff Emerick, the Beatles engineer. We had the Beatles team on the, and they tell us some stories once in a while. They didn't say too much, but you know, George Martin was. I mean, he was a god as far as we were concerned, because we're all Beatle fans.
Yeah.
You know, to be in the same studio with him was quite a coup.
Yeah, of course it would be at Air, because he'd long ago left EMI, and he had his own setup. He had Montserrat studio in Montserrat.
Yeah, Montserrat. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Volcano took it over.
Yeah. Do you remember who else was recording in the studios around that time, or was it just Stackridge?
Well, there was Roxy Music were there, and because Andy, what's his name, the sax player, came in and played on the album.
Yeah,
Andy Mackay. Yeah, he came and played, and I got a feeling Paul McCartney was mixing there as well. I remember that it was a Wings song. I forgot what it was called now.
So was this 73, 74?
73,
Alan,
recorded in 73.
Recorded in 73. It might have been something like Junior's Farm, or...
It was the one with the... I can't do it. It's the one with the... like a... I don't know how to describe it.
I'm trying to think. So 73, Live and Let Die was 72, I think. Hi.
It was one of sort of...
Red Rose Speedway. Interesting.
Sitting in these four walls.
Sitting on these four walls.
So it sounds like
forever.
Sounds like Band on the Run.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Never needed. So it was Band on the Run. So he was mixing Band on the Run. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, you go past the studios, you'd hear this, Roxy Music, or you'd see them in the community, the communal area.
So this is, as I say, it's probably the best known of the Stackridge 70s albums. It's probably, I mean, I know everyone's got their fans of all the different albums, but it's probably the peak of their... Quintessential is the word that's used. Quintessential. It had probably... Yeah. It's probably their most progressive rock album, but still with that whimsical stuff. But it had that great... the orchestral stuff that George Martin brought to it, like Godspeed the Plough.
Godspeed the Plough.
It's an epic. That's probably the closest to an epic song I think Stackridge have. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it was the first one to ever chart. I think it went 23 or came in at 23 or something in the UK charts, which we never had before.
Yeah, it's still. I mean, I was listening to it 2 or 3 times this week. In fact, I listened to it this morning again. It is a fabulous album. I think if I was to say to anybody, listen, if you could only listen to one Stackridge album, you would have to probably listen to this one, because I think it's the epitome of what they were trying to do.
Yeah, I liked Extravaganza too. That one in Extravaganza I liked.
Yeah, that's...
It was difficult for me because Alan would notice that when you hear it, when you're in a studio, you hear it about 50 times.
Yeah.
It doesn't,
But this has got everything on it. I mean, it's got the melodic, it's melodic, it's complex, it's got a lot of instrumental variety, very whimsical still. A lot of deep emotion or darker emotions on it, I think. Darker feelings, very progressive. It's a very beautiful progressive rock album, but uniquely Stackridge. I don't think anybody else sounds like this.
No, that's for sure.
Yeah. So beautiful album.
I don't think anybody sound like Stackridge. They were definitely unique as far as that goes.
The Last Plimsoll, the song.
Oh, the Last Plimsoll, yeah.
Well, at about 2010, I think Pete forwarded a message to me from the management, Mike Tobin, that apparently Craig Ferguson, who's a Scottish late night comedian, who used to be a punk drummer.
Oh yeah,
he was using parts of the Last Plimsoll for some of his intro and outro music and on the TV show.
Yeah,
and so they actually came over. They clubbed funds together to pay for flights, and hotels and stuff, and they asked would I help them out, and it was an absolute pleasure. Because the strange thing was, I'd never met Mutter until they came over in 2010, and he and I just clicked like we'd known each other for years. It was one of those kind of situations. And everybody else remembered me, Crun and James and Andy I've seen over the years. But they came, and the hope was that it would lead to maybe some more promotion. For one reason or another, it didn't amount to anything. But in the studio, and I just watched it on YouTube the other day.
It's on YouTube, yeah.
They played, it was beautiful. And at the end of the taping, the entire place just broke into real, genuine applause, the crew and everybody. And I was going like, yeah, they still got it. They really had, the performance was down. It was interesting. And the whole place just was genuinely loving it. And it's a shame it didn't amount to much more, but they didn't get aired for a couple of months, where if it could have been aired and they could have done some gigs around it.
I wanted to ask about something about that album. So Andy Davis is credited with all the music, but the words were credited to Smegma. How did that come about?
That was Crun and James.
Right.
You're sliding down the seat, Peter. We can't see you.
They talked about Smegma.
Yeah.
And then it became Smegma. So that was basically the Crun and James writing.
I think it's the only credit to Smegma you'll ever see on anything. But that album. But it's
well, you got to remember they're all very eccentric, and they all had their own. You know, when we first started, I remember we were going to a gig in the van, and I was in the front, and we stopped for some tea or something, and Crun was going to quit the band unless he could sit in the front seat. He quit the band until we give him the front seat.
Well, he didn't call shotgun. He should just shotgun. That would have been him. Yeah. That's very that been bands. People have quit bands for less than that.
I should send you I did a thing they had a web page earlier one, and I did a letter from America for the web page, and it was about our early days of touring with no accommodation.
I think
we used to end of every show, Mutter would say, anybody can put us up, come to the side of the stage.
All right.
And we'd end up in people's houses. To the fact, when somebody would come to the side of the stage, and I made sure when we got to the place where we were staying, I'd get through the door first, because you had to bag the couch or to bag the best spot. And I grabbed the couch, and I could be dying for a pee, but I wasn't going to move because someone else would have moved in. Yeah. And I would stay there till it was time to go to sleep. And then,
you needed empty bottles, mate. Empty bottles.
Yeah.
So this is the life of a glamorous rock star.
There was one where Crun and I fought, and we won the bed. They said there was a bed in the other room. So Crun and I rushed in there and got it. But what they didn't tell us was there was no mattress. It was just the wires, And we had the imprint on our face the following day.
Yeah, a great band, and one which have a body of work they can be proud of, and I'm sure that a band though that does want to forget Granny's arse on stage. I'd like to thank you both very much for sharing your memories of Stackridge and your time with them, and about talking about the music. It hopefully won't be the last time we do this.
I'm around.
But yeah. Thanks again. It's been a fascinating glimpse into the life of one of the most unique bands. Until next time, it's been real. Thanks for watching this Underlooked Bands special on the great Stackridge. If you've never heard Stackridge, please go seek out their albums. You won't be disappointed, in my opinion, by this very unique and underlooked English band. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, a comment, and consider subscribing. But until next time, keep on rocking.